Good day, folks, and happy Easter. This is Kip, your friendly neighborhood half-assed co-host. Welcome back to another week of Half-Assed, and thanks for joining us for episode 8. Just wanted to drop in for a second before the show starts and apologize for a bit of an audio snafu this week. With the hopes of improving our audio, I've made some changes to the hardware and actually managed to make it worse. I inadvertently created an echo in Craig's sound, which didn't come through while we were recording, but it's clearly present in the final cut. And from all appearances and a little bit of research I could do, it's just nearly impossible to remove that from a voice recording after the fact. I did run it through a noise gate with the hopes of minimizing it as much as possible. So I hope you'll bear with us as we get these kinds of things all sorted out. But in the meantime, you can enjoy a very divine sounding Craig. Anyway, light up, relax, and join us for this week's show. Sound's not that great, but we have some pretty decent content queued up for you, if I do say so myself. So enjoy, and thanks for coming back and checking in, and we'll be back again next week with episode 9.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Half-Assed. My name's Craig Schneider. On the other side of the glass is my good friend, Kip Fisher.
Good evening, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready for episode number 008. I can't believe it. 2 months already, and they haven't kicked us off.
No. The bandwidth is paid for. There's nothing they can do about it.
I'm sure there's some internet blacklist we'll make our way onto.
Yeah. We'll have, what's that group, the hacking group?
Anonymous.
Yeah, then we'll have an anonymous take us down.
I can't imagine we have very much protection we need to worry
Yeah,
we'll need to worry about.
I think we're probably low-hanging fruit for those guys.
That's all right. Let's hope they want bigger and better challenges. So how are you this evening? A little bit late on a Saturday night. I know that you're old and all. I hope that I don't have a problem keeping you awake.
I'll survive. I took a nap this afternoon.
You napped, okay. Playing right into my "you're an old son of a gun" joke. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't mind.
That's all right. Well, we've got an interesting cigar tonight. Only done one other Unbanded on the show, and tonight is the second.
Yep, this one is suggested by Jeff Curtis, who sent an email in to my wife, and she had a friend of mine source these for us. And so now everybody knows as much as I know about them.
Yeah, that makes this introduction and greeting segment a little bit shorter than normal, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It sure does. It makes for a possibility of some dead air to talk about this cigar at this point.
Well, right away, I guess the information we can share about the cigar, shape, size, some basics about it, that sort of a thing. Looks like it's just about the perfect Corona Gorda, 5 5/8, 46, with a really matte color, Maduro, maybe Colorado Maduro wrapper to it. But I don't know about mine, and I don't even know if you've got the right light to see this, but mine's got the start of plume, those like little crystal, I don't know, reflective bits on there. That's the oil kind of coming out and starting to crystallize or something. I don't know if you can see that on yours or if it has it or what, but
I don't have good lighting, but I can see the sparkle as I turn it in the light that is available, and I had not paid attention that was there until you just said so.
it looks like how your wife, well, anyone's wife would never admit to sweating. And so women glisten, they don't sweat. That's what this cigar looks like. It looks like you turn it and it's glistening.
It's a Twilight cigar.
Well, I've never seen those movies, but you just went down a notch in my book, just so you know.
I have not seen those movies either, just for the record.
Oh, come on. You've got a young daughter. Of course you've seen those movies. It's
No,
okay to admit it.
She has not seen those movies. My wife has not seen those movies.
Wow. Well, my wife reluctantly has gone. She read the books and liked the books and thinks that the movies are just horrible. But all of her girlfriends have convinced her to go see him at like midnight showings, and so Ellie comes home and is like, 2 hours of my life wasted. I'm never getting back. And yet she went to see all 4 or 5 of them or whatever it is. So
yeah, I had a friend, Toby, who is a grown man, that was going to those with his wife, and about the third one said he realized he was not a 13-year-old girl, and he didn't go back.
It's funny that it took him 6 hours to realize he wasn't a 13-year-old girl. It's all right. Well, I'm sure our listeners will right away be able to tell that you're sounding loud and clear and coming to them from a little bit closer range than normal, thanks to a nice new fancy headset.
Yeah, this nice new fancy headset I picked up at Walmart as a stopgap until I can figure out the soundboard and mic that I picked up beforehand. I'm part of that older generation that can't make these kind of things work.
Well, 2003 called and they said, "Welcome to the year. We appreciate you entering into Xbox and PlayStation 2 and all that jazz when you can play online." So, it's nice to know that you finally decided to come into this millennia.
Yeah. I used to play Xbox quite a bit, just for the record, again. But
probably in 2003.
No. We have the latest generation of 360 and plans on the 720 as soon as it comes out this upcoming holiday season.
Very nice. I have Wii, and I could definitely be a video game dork. There's no doubt about it. But more than a video game dork, I am an absolute stingy son of a gun. So I have not bought a video game system other than the one my wife did. So.
Well, I have an 8-year-old son, so I can buy these kinds of things under the guise of it being for him.
That's true. I do remember when I got Sega Genesis as like a 16-year-old when it was out and cool. I remember that the gift was actually addressed to my dad on Christmas morning, not me. So. Well, I gotta say this Unbanded by Jeff right away is a cigar that I'm enjoying.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. It tastes not necessarily in terms of the spice, but the flavor family is kind of that Pepin branded taste to me.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I know it's kind of a weird analogy, but I've used it before when I'll get a cheese flavor from cigars, and this one I definitely get a very, very distinct flavor. My mom, when I was growing up, would make this artichoke dip, and it was like all the absolute worst things in the world for you. It was like a cup of mayonnaise and a half a pound of processed Parmesan cheese, and 2 cups of mozzarella cheese and a few artichokes and like some, I don't know, capers or something else. You throw it all together. You mix it and you put it in the oven for like an hour, and there's this really unctuous, savory, cheesy, creamy, cheesy flavor that you get out of it. And I get like that same sort of nasal, I don't know, that kind of sharp, cheesy flavor. It's, I don't know, very interesting, unexpected.
I don't think I've ever picked up cheese in the cigar before. Kind of a neat thought.
It's very weird. This has got some other sweetness to it too, but I just cannot believe how fast it's burning.
I know. It's been all of 10 minutes now, and I'm an inch into this thing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have another cigar behind it. This one's burning rapidly.
Yeah. Well, I guess the good part about that is that, considering this is an unbanded cigar, and we have to have some sort of grand unveiling later on, we might have that unveiling a little sooner than later, so that's nice.
Make for a short show.
Yes. Well, we'll have at least one listener who's happy for the short show. We got an email, a nice email earlier in the week from a gentleman who said, "Great guys, the show's great, really like it, but can you please keep it to an hour?" And immediately upon reading that, I realized, obviously, this gentleman's never met me, or he would know that that's not possible.
Yeah, it was a nice email. He wasn't being bothersome at all. My own, we haven't even talked about this email, but to me, especially with the Unbandeds, normally it takes about 2 hours for me to smoke a cigar. So that's kind of just how the show's playing out. And I guess you were used to 2 hours with Dog Watch, and that's just kind of where we settled so far.
Yeah.
Of course, last week was a little short. It was a shorter than normal show last week.
Just barely, though, like an hour 50. Still short, or still nice and long.
Yeah, somewhere about there.
Yeah.
Hour and 40 something.
Well, I guess we should cut to the chase, otherwise this cigar is going to be gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so far so good, Jeff. We'll see if you play a nasty trick on us later on as we get a bit further into it. Well, you want to get into some of these news items we got here?
Yeah. Anything in particular, or you just want to head down the list?
I think it's about time we head down the list. I've stretched out that intro as long as I can without sounding like a fool.
Yes, so you think.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. That's my job, to bother people.
Yeah, no.
Well, the first item we got up there is a revisit from earlier weeks, and it's the Florida outdoor smoking ban. This thing's still alive and has passed the Regulated Industries Committee, and they actually pushed that thing through unanimously, 10-0. 10 people, all 10 of them, wanted to advance that. And this is kind of a big deal for any of you folks out there that are in Florida, and I know just from the behind-the-scenes stats that a fair number of you are. If you're ever going to dial in and send an email to your representatives, this is the time to do it. And I'll put a link back up on this week's show summary. And it literally takes 30 seconds to do this. And you don't have to commit to anything. You can go right through CRA's website and do it. And it bounces off an email to your the appropriate reps for you. This is a big one. This is not a typical piece of legislation that we've seen in the past. This is a game changer if you like to smoke cigars in the state of Florida. It basically opens the door to banning that practice anywhere and everywhere on public lands, in all of our parks and beaches, and county sidewalks, local government-owned property. It's going to be at their whim to ban smoking altogether.
I think I've commented in the past that I've had the pleasure of smoking on a beach in Miami a time or two, and being someone who is kind of a typical Florida tourist, I would miss that if it wasn't there. So I know it's kind of a silly, selfish reason, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. It just feels tropical, and when I'm down there and I'm in that setting where I'm just vacationing, there's not much to me that's better than a cigar on the beach or just walking around. Long walks on the beach, Kip.
Yeah, and same here. I live here, and I like to go to the beach and have a cigar. And we already have some county parks here that have posted signs that smoking's not allowed there, but knowing that they have no legal basis to do that, I've completely ignored them so far without any trouble. But man, that would be bothersome not to be able to just run down to the beach for an afternoon and let the kids play in the water and have a cigar.
That's interesting. I never would have realized that a sign posted saying you can't smoke here, if there's not a law that backs it up, it doesn't mean anything and it can be disobeyed without any problems.
Well, it's a little different than private property where you can pretty much do whatever you want. And I guess the courts decided this a month or two ago that right was reserved by the state, and it's not allowable at this point unless this legislation passes, that local counties, cities, governments can't make ordinances that are more stringent than the existing smoking ban, simply because of the way the ban was written statewide, and the state legislature specifically reserved that right.
Well, not being someone who really has much of a stake in this, as I said, besides something other than a selfish, tourist request, it would be awful nice if something like this right was able to stick around. And so I kind of implore our Florida brethren to do something about this. If you have an opportunity, might as well be a time to make your voice heard.
Yeah, and one of the bigger problems is what follows this. We already have parts of the country that are putting bans in place to ban smoking in your own home if you are in a multiple family housing area in a development.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, I think, a couple of spots in California have already banned smoking in your car.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know about that.
Initially under the guise of not smoking with children in the car, and I get that. I can understand that, although I don't know that it's the government's place to do it. But it's kind of has pushed past that envelope already.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Not that I want anyone to put their children in a position that might be less than ideal, but I also am not exactly sure I want the government to tell me what they think is ideal is what I need to think is ideal. But,
right. Just from what I've seen from the government during my lifetime, I really don't want to give them anything else to deal with.
I guess it is a two-sided argument, though. I mean, I can think back on times, just being objective here, I can think back on times that I've been driving down a 4-lane highway or something, and I look to my left or to my right, and there's some parent who's got some toddlers just using the backseat of the car as a jungle gym, and I know that I have thought, man, that's just terrible. I wish I could stop them from doing that, So I know that I have kind of thought that someone should care for their children in a manner that I feel is good enough. And so I could see that as being reason why someone in the government might say, well, it's our position to step in to make sure they don't do that bad thing, because I would have liked to have done it in those other cases. But, I just because I can see some rationale in it doesn't mean that I want them to be able to do that.
Yeah, you're probably too young to remember the days before car seats, huh?
Oh no, my parents had a rust-colored Chevy Monza that I distinctly remember crawling around in. But I mean, doesn't mean that it was safe. I can also remember the mommy seatbelt. Okay, I'm sitting on mom's lap. There's my seatbelt. It's mom's hands around my waist.
Yeah. Or the arm across when the brakes get slammed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have pictures of me as a very small child. My dad had a '68 Camaro, and my spot was standing in the seat between him and my mom.
Yeah, I guess you are an old son of a gun.
Well, no. I wasn't born in '68. The car was old by that point.
I know. Oh, the car wasn't that old. The car was 7 or 8 years old.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Well, on the risk of losing some of our audience who's not in Florida, who perhaps isn't as diligent with their CRA responsibilities as the rest of us, what do you say we move on to this related yet more unique and interactive idea that Dan had?
Absolutely. Those of you that have listened to past shows know we talk about DC or Dan Crouch with some regularity.
Dan Crotch.
Yeah, Dan Crotch, as my daughter called him during the drawing. He sent an email and had an idea that maybe we could bring on some of the other guys, some of the other listeners, and he mentioned 2 in particular that are in other countries that have already gone beyond where we are today with the smoking legislation. Just let them talk a little bit about what's life like on the other side of that regulation, where they've taken their ability to smoke in most all public places and tightly controlled how they purchase their cigars and how they find their cigars and advertising, and put in just prohibitive taxes on top of cigar prices. And we thought that was a pretty good idea. We may put those guys on the spot sometime and bring 1 or 2 of them in to talk.
Yeah, as crazy as it sounds, we do have some international listeners. And a couple of them are in 2 countries that we know of that might be interesting and also very enlightening for those of us in the States or in perhaps less restrictive areas to kind of hear how things could get a little bit worse, how things could be a little crazier, and just let them know that, hey, that precedent's out there and these people are sharing some firsthand experiences with it, and we got to do what we can with the CRA to make sure that it doesn't get to that point.
Yep, I'm all on board with CRA, as if you didn't know that already.
I had no idea. Well, you got some updates on cigars becoming available that we've discussed in the last few weeks here. Why don't you head right in?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about L'Atelier and some of the new cigars they have coming out, in particular the Lat 44 Maduro, which is a little different for a couple of reasons than their other offerings that come out, one of which I had earlier today and am really enjoying right now, that Lat 52. But I traded a couple of tweets with KC Johnson this week, who is Pete's brother and one of the co-founders or co-owners of L'Atelier, with what's his name, Sean Casper Johnson, who is not Pete's brother. I don't believe they're related at all, just a coincidence. And Dan Welsh, who is at New Havana Cigars, and they run this company. And I just asked him when the launch date or release date for the Lat 44 Maduro was going to be, and it looks like June the 1st is what they're shooting for. Seem pretty confident. Smoking early run samples this week made me a little jealous. So I'm anxious to see those for a couple of reasons. One, it's a Maduro, which is different than what they've been doing with the other line. And it's also a narrower ring. It's a 44 ring rather than the 52, 54, and 56 that are already out there. And I'm a 44, 46, and 48 kind of guy. So I'm anxious to see those myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to admit I'm a relatively common fan of, or a relatively well-known fan of a lot of the stuff that Pete Johnson's got his hand in. I think that he's certainly got a talented palate that a ton of guys in this lifestyle really do enjoy. So it'll be a fun one to kind of stick my hands on and light up. One of my favorite cigars that actually we will be reviewing on the show is Cabaguan Maduro. So I really have enjoyed some of the Maduros from Pete that I've gotten my hands on. So the Lat 44 should be an interesting addition to that line.
Yeah, I've tried, I don't know, a handful of the offerings from L'Atelier now, and can't say that there's any of them I haven't enjoyed. But the Lat 52 and the Tramp Stamp through their Surrogates line, those two were just fantastic. I absolutely adore those cigars.
Now, tell me, I know the Surrogates are something that Dan's had going on New Havana for quite some time, but have they been kind of rebranded with the L'Atelier, or?
I can't answer that with any specificity. I mean, they fall under that umbrella. They, in their literature and pictures they put up and whatnot, they changed the profile picture on their Facebook page just today, and with a picture of all the L'Atelier offerings, and it included the newer or the existing line of Surrogates, the Tramp Stamp, Skullbreaker. I don't remember the third one.
Bone Crusher? No, not Bone Crusher.
Something like that. I think that may have been one of the older original lines.
That might have been it. Well, nonetheless, should be pretty fun. You've got the next one on here, Crown Heads Headley Grange. You've got listed as having shipped out on Tuesday of this week. So locations that were lucky enough to have this cigar sent to them, they should be hitting the shelves really, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, being that it's Easter, but all sent out overnight and on their way from the Dominican Republic. So this is kind of interesting. It's a cigar that I'm not too familiar with, other than I guess just hearing it over the years from Bob and Dale and from you. But talk to me a little bit about Crown Heads stuff. I know that they've got some cigars that have come out somewhat recently that have been some big successes, and Headley Grange is a re-release, correct?
Yeah, John Huber and a couple other guys that left CAO after the buyout, when General took them over, started Crowned Heads, and their first release was the Four Kicks, and which I like that cigar actually quite a bit. And then the follow-up release was the Headley Grange, and that launched shortly after IPCPR this past year, but only in one size. And this week, 4 more sizes launched with that and shipped. And like you said, they all were distributed overnight this week to the retailers. But John Huber put up a tweet that there would be another shipment quickly following. It was actually launching that day, that same day, from the Dominican to him to be distributed to the retailer. That first size, I actually ran into Wes, and I'm having trouble remembering his last name. He's the first guy that they brought on board as an ambassador, so to speak, or a front man to travel the country for Crown Heads. He was in Tampa. He was in Tampa this week, so I spent a few minutes with him at a cigar shop. Gave me a couple little informational things about it. Estupendos was the first size that's been available now for several months. These other 4, the Corona Gorda, which is 5 5/8 by 46, that's right up my alley. I'm again anxious to try that once I can find them on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I only really have one retailer that carries them in Tampa at this point. Cigar Castle down there has them. So I'll be waiting by the door when they come in, I'm sure.
Well, 4 Kicks was certainly a cigar that, it seems all the press that I heard on that cigar was good press. So I know that anything else that's coming from those guys at Crown Heads is probably going to be very well received, or at least received with open arms. So.
Yeah, and these are EP Carrillo creations. He is rolling them for them. They actually do the blending. They are the final say on all the blending options and choices that are made. And my understanding from a blog post that John put up was that he deferred everything to them in the blending. I don't know if he didn't want the responsibility or didn't have time for the glory. Whatever the motivation is, I don't know. But they make all the choices and decisions for blending, and then he's rolling them for them. It's a good partnership so far. I've really liked everything they put out.
Well, let's hope more comes from good partnerships like that. I have certainly shared my my praise of EPC's factory, his employees, and it seems like their absolute dedication to what it is that they're doing and putting out great cigars and doing it with integrity. So it's nice that these guys are partnered up and putting out some good sticks.
Yeah, and that actually leads us into the next little snippet. This was a posting from EP Rio personnel this week that the 2013 short runs will be shipping next week. I guess there's only 5,000 boxes made, which I believe is normal production for those. 2011 short run, I absolutely loved it. The 2012 I wasn't a huge fan of. It just wasn't my taste. Nothing wrong with the cigar. Just wasn't something I went on the warpath to try to track them down. That 2011 was something special.
Well, speaking of cigars that aren't going to be around for too terribly long, the Avo Dominant 13 that we talked about a number of weeks back, that's heading up on showing up on shelves. So if you ever plan on getting any of these, it's probably in your best interest to pick them up soon, because they do go fairly quickly. Yeah,
every one of Avo's limited editions go quickly. You'll still see them on occasion, and especially in a place like Corona Cigar over there in Orlando. They have them hang around for a while. They have an Avo lounge, so they have a great deal of Avo cigars. Anyway, you can still find them, and I actually had to go pick my parents up at the airport last week, and was hanging out over there, and they still had the 2009s, which was my favorite, the Compañero. And I did not pick up a couple, but if I'm back next time and they still have them, I'm sure I will.
Well, twist your arm. Okay, I'll have some.
Yeah. Well, it's not an inexpensive cigar. They retail for $15, $16 a stick, but that Compañero was worth one or two of them for me anyway.
Well, another interesting thing coming up here is CYB, the formerly named Cuenca y Blanco. has lit up Twitter once again. Jose Blanco doing what he does best and letting people know that that CYB is going to be available on a Lancero here coming up. So that's exciting news.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that strikes me funny sometimes is the 6x60 being such a hugely popular faddish kind of size, and what strikes me as funny is, one, the number of people I encountered that say, yeah, I don't care for those bigger rings, but somehow millions and millions of them sell all the time. And the same here. This is a Lancero. The disparity in popular sizes is odd to me, that everybody loves 6x60 and everybody loves Lanceros. I don't know. It's just odd.
Yeah, what happened to the Coronas and Robustos? Why don't people enjoy those as much?
Yeah, meanwhile, we have Jesus Fuego dropping the Coronas and smaller sizes out
And
of his lineup.
Bellicosos, yeah. Yeah.
But the Lancero, the CYB, is, my understanding is, it's only going to be available to TAA member retailers. So that may or may not be an issue depending on who your normal store is.
Well, I know I'll seek it out. I've definitely enjoyed a Lancero Vitola once or twice, as I'm sure most people wouldn't be surprised to hear. CYB is a cigar that, or Cuenca Blanco CYB, whatever it is a cigar that I've had a number of. I really haven't experimented with heavily on that one. I mean, I've certainly mentioned that I'm not the guy who, goes out and tries to buy the brand new cigars just because it's a brand new cigar. But I really respect Jose Blanco. I know he's got a terrific palate and is incredibly well educated, and I like a lot of the things that come out of Hoyta, Nicaragua. So it was a cigar that I was interested to try. I just never really, went all out to go crazy and get it. Had a few of them, yep, liked it, but it wasn't exactly one of those cigars that I said, "Oh man, I'm gonna find a regular position for that in my rotation." Not that there's anything wrong with the cigar whatsoever. It's just I like what I like, and why not stick with what I know I'm going to enjoy, other than some samples?
Yeah, and I tried the it was, a Bellicoso torpedo kind of shape. And same thing, really liked it. Didn't go nuts to track them down, but I could not tell you the number of people that have said to me when I made that comment, well, you have to try the Lonsdale, and I still haven't. And people, just average Joes on the street, retailers, industry folks, they constantly tell me, well, you got to try the Lonsdale in that line. That seems to be the Vitola that has struck a chord with most people. And I still have not done that.
I once heard Lonsdale's described as the most suave example of a blend. And I don't know what that really constitutes, because suave is such a subjective word, but in my experiences, if I've had a Corona or a Petite Corona or a Lonsdale, there's something about that Lonsdale to me that does seem to be a little bit richer and a little bit more, I don't know, mature. I know it's stupid and it's totally subjective, but I wouldn't doubt it. I've had some killer Lonsdales in my life, and it's just a shame that they're 6.5 inches long and usually bigger than what I smoke. But I don't know. Maybe I'll have to try one of those CYB lawns. Might be worth it.
Yeah, I undoubtedly will get around to it. I just haven't thus far.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Well, this next one is interesting to me. I kind of always from afar watch these trademark battles that go on, and the latest of which I'm sure many of you have heard about. General Cigar has once again won their battle for U.S. trademarks against Cuba Tobacco. Cuba Tobacco is essentially the mothership when it comes to Cuban cigars, the branch of the Cuban government, or the company portion of the Cuban government that's handling Cuban cigar manufacture. And so, as you would expect, General Cigar was rather happy and proud of this fact, and the ongoing saga continues. This one goes to General.
Yeah, and it seems like most of them do. I mean, this press release that came out could have been from any number of different court cases that have come up. The courts basically continue to find that Cuba Tobacco has no standing to even challenge the trademark because they can't market their products here. So it's hard to say you have a legal claim to a trademark in a location you can't sell your product.
Yeah.
But they keep trying.
I'll be very interested, as everyone will. I'll be very interested to see how this judgment changes, if and when Cuba Tobacco could ever market to America. It'd be so interesting to see how the crap's going to hit the fan when that does occur.
Oh yeah, it's going to splatter everywhere. Just to continue with an odd metaphor, but what do you do when a company that has held the trademark elsewhere for decades earlier than the one that has it in this country? There's going to have to be some kind of agreement reached before those cigars can be brought to market here after they're even legal. And I go back to a Dogwatch episode, and it never occurred to me until Bob said this, that the thing he's most excited about if and when the embargo's ever lifted is not the availability of the existing Cuban lines, but just the fact that blenders of other cigar companies that we're familiar with are going to have access to Cuban tobacco to put into the blends. It's just a game changer and a whole new leaf to put into a blend and change what's there already.
Yeah, that certainly will be interesting. And one of the last items that I think should be mentioned on this topic is that it certainly could play into account the verdict being what it was, or the ruling being what it was. It certainly would play into it the fact that Cohiba, which this trademark battle was specifically about, has never been available in America legally. Cohiba wasn't manufactured, or the blend wasn't even created until the late 60s, well after the embargo had began. So this is not a cigar that ever could legally have been here. There's no pre-embargo Cubans, or excuse me, no pre-embargo Cohibas. There's no such thing. So I think that you may have a little bit more of a case when you look at products that could legally still be here. You could legally still market a pre-embargo cigar like a Monte Cristo or a Punch or a Partagas or any of those. It would be interesting to hear that case if someone tried to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and not only is it legal, it happens. I mean, a cigar shop that I just mentioned, Corona Cigar, has a case full of ancient Cuban cigars. If you want to drop $200 to $400 a stick for them, you can have them all you want.
Yeah. I've seen that case. Well, it's kind of fun to get into the legal side of things every once in a while, or at least it is for me. So
it's fun to watch. I don't know that I'd want to be directly involved.
Yeah, you can say that again. Well, I have let this cigar go out. I'm going to need to relight.
Man, I cannot believe we're 30, 40 minutes into this, and I'm down like an inch and a half of this thing left.
Wow. I've been trying to smoke it a little more slower for that specific reason, because I had a fear that that I'd finish it off rather quickly.
But I have to say, it's not. There's nothing. I mean, it's burning fast, but it's not. I'm not finding any ill effects for it. It's still a pleasant cigar. It's not. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you have a cigar that's dry and it's burning really fast, it gets harsh and hot. None of that. This is a very nice cigar.
Yeah, I do agree with that fact. It's just what the cigar is. It's not something that's becoming a detriment at all.
Yeah, and I'm still tastes kind of Pepin-esque to me, with that just that little bit of sweetness that makes the backdrop some just really nice tobacco-y flavor, to quote Dale.
Well, I should probably give this one a fair shake before we move too much further into it. I definitely get a sweetness that you're talking about. Oh, let me take another puff. I get a little bit of those tea-like flavors. This is not so distinctly black tea at all. It's more like a an iced tea flavor. Um, Kind of has a little bit of that slight bit of that tannic flavor, but it's kind of got that underlying sweetness and dry tea, kind of ambiguous tea flavor.
Yeah, it's kind of a tannic feel to me more than a flavor. The feeling generated by some of the dry teas.
Yeah,
Things that are heavy in tannins.
I've had the pleasure to have some really unique vintage loose leaf teas that a friend of mine sent me a half a dozen to try. And it's just amazing how much life good tea can have. I heard someone say at one point that the worst thing for tea drinkers was the invention of the tea bag, um, because it's so simple, it's processed, it's no longer tea that it has kind of got a life of its own, like wine or tobacco or cigars. You just kind of take it all out of it. It would be the equivalent to like cigarette tobacco in comparison to cigar tobacco.
Absolutely. Excuse me just a second.
Oh, no problem.
Had to clear my throat there. I was trying not to do that on the air. Christy and I love hot tea. I can't even stomach the thought of iced tea. It's just repulsive to me, but I love hot tea. And I know I'm from the South, and that's kind of weird. I can't drink sweet tea. But
yeah, shh, don't say that too loud.
Yeah, I got to look for black helicopters if I say something like that. But we, for a while, were ordering this tea from it's actually an importer, importer and exporter, I suppose. They imported from Asia into Canada and then into the U.S. all these different teas, and you could, specify that you wanted. It's not primings in tobacco, but the first blush or the first rinse, or there was a term for it, I don't remember, of tea leaves. And it was always be so much more flavorful and bold. And what you just said about tea bags is exactly right. Buy tea off the shelf in bags, and it may be, within the tea industry, they would say it's ancient. It's lost a lot by that point. And I agree completely with what you said, that time is not kind to tea leaves.
Well, what's interesting about that is some of the oolongs and other blacks that I had been given, I was told that they are years old, and it's just so strange because I literally think of it like cigar tobacco compared to cigarette tobacco. You can have a cigar that might be a dozen years old, and it's got life and vibrance, and it's just a whole other depth of complexity. And then you have some other generic, like a backwoods or something, and in 10 years it's going to be like smoking paper. It just, you need that structure, that depth, that biological or chemical mass. It's or biochemical maybe is the right term. I don't know. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. Leave me alone, people who are listening, slapping their forehead right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I think probably like tobacco, it depends on the tea quite a bit. It depends on what it is specifically that you're talking about, whether it's good on day one or good in 6 months or good in a year. How quickly it goes over the hill, just like tobaccos. Some cigars age beautifully and are going to be in their prime at 5 years or 10 years, and others are going to be pretty flat by that.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt at all. Well, the last item that we've got on here is actually a pretty fun one for me. We just recently had sourced some cigars from this retailer, both of us, but Butthead's Tobacco posted a picture of an event-only cigar that they wanted to share, the Nessa Miranda Blue Label, and you just bring up a good point. What are my thoughts on event-only cigars? Is it worthwhile to seek them out, or does it kind of bother me a little bit because they're strictly marketing ploys, or what? And it kind of got me thinking a bit. there are so many of those event-only sticks, and it's not just, excuse me, it's not just event-only. It can be lounge-only or, limited, but a forced limit. We're only going to let you get them here. It doesn't mean we're not going to make a lot of the cigar. It just means you're going to have to work for them, or you're going to have to come out and do something for it. And I don't know. It's a little annoying from the perspective of someone who cigars. Yeah, it's fun. The chase is a blast. The rushing home at the end of the day to see if there's a box on your porch out front because you've been waiting for something to show up. Yeah, that part is interesting. It's unique. It's fun, but I also don't really like how there seems to be so many of these event only offerings. I mean, I don't know. I have this desire to expand my horizons as much as possible, and it just seems like it's kind of why I don't go crazy over brand new releases. It's like I want a good cigar and I want what's available to me. I don't want the newest and hottest thing just because it's the newest and hottest. If that event only cigar is truly special and it's unique and they can't make enough of it to do mass production out of because it's such a unique way of processing, or a small quantity of leaf because it's such a high quality, then I have interest in it. But if it's the fifth size of a normal line that you can only get when you come out, and all they want you to do is come out and spend money and generate hype, then I don't like it. But
yeah, I'm there with you, and I'm fortunate enough to be in an area where you go to Tampa, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a cigar store sometimes.
yeah.
There's plenty of events and plenty of opportunities for these kinds of things, but it occurred to me that there's folks out there that simply don't have a retailer within 50 miles, and they're never going to be able to go out and make it to an event to pick up some of these cigars. And I can see that being bothersome, or make you feel like you missed out on something. I don't know that that's the case, because some of these event cigars are very good cigars, and maybe they were spawned through a mistake when they were rolling at the factory. Maybe it actually is a special blend that a manufacturer developed for this purpose. There's a myriad reasons why these things occur or why they're created. But some of them have just been just another cigar. There's not anything special about them, but they're hyped up beyond all belief just because not everybody's going to have the chance to try it.
Well, I can think of a few examples. I know Tarano a few years back had a blend, or at least a cigar. I'm not too terribly familiar with it. That was an event-only cigar. I know a lot of other manufacturers will, come out with a roller at an event. They'll come out and, oh yeah, you can get our event rolled cigars. You can get them, or a number of other different offerings. I mean, we talked a couple weeks back about that Cane Daytona Lancero only being available at that one event. So I certainly can admit that I've fallen prey to the marketing ploy on a few occasions. It's just when you sit back and think about it, it's a bit, I don't know, it kind of pisses you off a touch, perhaps, for all the reasons we've talked about.
Yeah, and I don't mind going on, what's the word I'm looking for? A wild goose chase to find a cigar that is something different, that is special, that is, it was limited because they only had this amount of tobacco to make them. I'm good with that. But if, like you said, it's just an extension of an existing line where they add one more size, unless it's something really special about that blend and that size that makes it that different, I guess I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fun to think about and play with and figure out what our opinions are. So
Come on, man.
For those of you who are just listening to this, Kip before the show had asked if I could download a Google plugin for our Google Hangout, our Google Plus Hangout. And, it allows us to kind of edit some text that's on the video feed and all this. So I've been changing my some of my supplemental text that I'm putting on there to see if Kip was reading it or not, and he's caught the last two. And this one I was a little bold. I might have put a little insult about him on there. So
Yeah, you know I have final editing capabilities before this goes out.
that's all right. See, now the audio part is out there, so you're gonna need to flag this whole thing to pick out which part you're gonna edit out and all that. So
No, not take it out. Just change what it says.
Craig is a young fool. Is that what you're gonna say? Well,
Oh man, I've lost my train of thought altogether.
I think we were just finishing up on the on all the news items here and cigar availability and all that jazz. So
Yeah, and the event cigars. I saw that picture that Buttheads put up, and I thought, I'd like to try that. And then the whole thing that started this train of thought was just, well, why do I want to try it? What's different about that cigar? Despite the fact that there's a good chance I'm going to have the opportunity because they'll be doing some events around here, I'm sure. But it was just a passing thought, much like the poll we're going to talk about in just a second.
yeah, absolutely. Well, how about we move right on to our other interest discussion here?
Okay, I'm going to have to go back and see. Maybe I am pretty much done with this. I have getting down to burning my fingertips with tonight's cigar.
Oh yeah.
And I got to tell you, there is zero harshness. This thing is not tarred up or bitter or harsh. It is good to the very last half inch.
What's your opinion on country of origin?
Well, if I had to make some kind of just completely wild guess, I would say Nicaraguan, just because it doesn't strike me as something else. And I don't know that it jumps out and convinces me that that's what it is, but I can't think of anything that's any closer to what I imagine it to be.
Yeah, I would say that along the same lines as you, I don't have a clear front runner as to what I think this is. So I would say that with some certainty, it's a blend of multiple leaves from many different countries, or numerous different countries. At least I'll put it that way. It really doesn't. It doesn't have kind of hallmark. Okay, it's got a bit of this and a bit of that to make me think that it's from one area or another. It really is just a unique cigar in that it's just a good cigar. It's not good for one reason or another. I'm interested in that. I think there's some Dominican leaves in there. It has some of the spiced nature that I like. There is definitely some of the citrusy, sweet kind of Nicaraguan character, but I don't think that it's as clear as what I'd expect normal Nicaraguan cigars to be.
Yeah, I can follow that. That makes sense to me. And look, it grew. It's like 2 inches long and a 52 ring.
I might even, I might go out on a limb here. I wonder if the fact that it's not striking me as being definitely Nicaraguan, or definitely Dominican, is maybe a sign that it has some different tobacco stuff that I'm not incredibly used to. I wonder if maybe there's some Costa Rican tobacco in here, perhaps. I'm not an expert at Costa Rican stuff whatsoever, but it's just not a cigar that seems to have a very clearly defined lineage at all to me. I'm wondering if that might be why. It's got tobacco from areas that I'm not incredibly familiar with.
Could be. I don't know that I would have guessed Costa Rican. Just because I usually get a very particular citrus kind of taste if there's a measurable amount of Costa Rican tobacco in a cigar. But hey, who knows?
Well, the cigar tastes new school to me, and I've talked in the past about kind of new school and old school Nicaraguan flavors. It seems like some of the newer Nicaraguan releases have a bit of a more unique flavor to them, or a specific flavor to them, and I'm not getting I'm not getting anything that's telling me that this is an old school cigar. It doesn't taste like anything that, is perhaps of a trend that might be 10, 15 years old. Still good, but just reminiscent of something. So I think it's probably either a boutique cigar or a cigar that is um, perhaps made with some alternative tobacco that I'm not used to. And I don't just mean Costa Rican because I taste Costa Rican. It's just that's kind of the example of what I was going with. Um, I think that it's a newer school blender. Somebody without any restrictions who's just doing something different because they think it's a great idea rather than, this is what they expect or plan to make because it's what they've always done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can follow you.
Think of like Pepin. I'm sorry. Think of Fuente being old school. A lot of those Fuente flavors are obviously very complex, but there's kind of that core that's reminiscent. It's familiar. And then you think of somebody like Abe Flores or Pete Johnson, these guys who really have come into the picture in the last 5-10 years, and they've just got this different idea of what they expect a good cigar to be, and it doesn't have boundaries, or it doesn't have to meet a specific core flavor. So that's kind of what I mean by new school. So
yeah, they have a different box or to think outside of.
yeah,
not that the other folks are hemmed in by a box or anything. Not that the old school guys, I don't mean that to take away from them in the least. Just the new guys, I guess maybe they're a little more willing to take on some risk with putting something out
there couldn't be a better example than Old World versus New World wines. I mean, like a Napa or Sonoma wines in comparison to traditional French wines. So, it's kind of that different idea. There's no rules versus kind of a strict lineage that you're trying to live up to.
Yeah, and actually, what we're talking about right now is one of the things that excites me about this Casa Cuba that Fuentes had lined up and due out for 2 years almost now. I'm so excited to see that thing in the market, selfishly, because I'm going to hoard them. But it's a very different cigar than their typical offering.
Well, it'll definitely be interesting, no doubt about it. I hope that they succeed.
Yeah, and if not, I'm going to buy all I can just in case. So, moving down through the notes there, look like you had a cigar you really liked this week.
Oh man, yes, I did. I have been a fan of the La Roma de Cuba Mi Amors since their release. I absolutely fell in love with them at IPCPR a number of years back, 4 years ago, whenever it was, I think. Absolutely fell in love with them. Thought that they were the best thing to come out of the My Father factory regular production ever. And I still tend to agree with that. They line up extremely well with my my preferences. And so this week I had my first, granted this is only a snippet based on one cigar, but I had my first Mi Amor Reserva. So these were released last year, I believe. It's has a different second band or supplemental band on it. It says both Mi Amor and Reserva. It's a little bit redder coloration to the bands, and it's just a spectacular cigar. If that Mi Amor could have gotten better, I think that they've achieved it somehow. I didn't know if it was possible, but the flavors are a little bit nuttier, a little bit sweeter. It's like they just, they went to 11, and they've succeeded. I think it's an absolute terrific addition to the name, the namesake of the cigar, and I want a box. If I had had more than one sealed box of the Mi Amor, it would have been in my 12 cigars that I recommended for this show that I would like to review for this show. It's just I only had one box at the time, and it was fully sealed, so I wasn't cracking it. Man, oh man, I would truly love to stock up my humidor with these, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I tried those at the show last year, but I just had one, and I don't know that it struck me as deeply as it did you. But at the show, you're smoking 7 or 8 cigars a day, so it's really
Yeah.
not a good time to judge a cigar.
Well, I had initially thought that I think I might have even texted you about this, that I thought that it was a perfect cigar. Um, and that was when I was into the second third. As the cigar finished throughout its entire length, there were a couple flavors or snippets of flavor that I just don't care for. I got that kind of basic woodiness that I find comes out in spades whenever I'm smoking. Well, often when I'm smoking tobacco from Jalapa region of Nicaragua. I got just a touch of that on a few occasions. I think it was more when I had the cigar heat up a bit. Um, I was smoking it outside. It was a very still morning when I started, and as I finished, um, or as I was finishing the cigar, it ended up having a bit of a breeze that picked up. So areas of the cigar would burn a little bit faster than others and perhaps heat up a little bit faster. So at some of those moments when I noticed that it was a little windy, it was when I was starting to get that woody flavor. So I wouldn't say that the cigar was perfect or perfect for me, but it was pretty darn close, man. I uh, I don't know if I can give a higher recommendation to a cigar. So I truly am honest when I say that it's the best cigar I've had all year so far, no doubt about it.
Cool. Sounds like I need to go back and revisit those. Um,
Oh, mamacita, I think you do.
I don't know if you've had the chance to do one of Ashton's tasting events they do, but they do a great job with those. And it's usually the one they did not too long ago in Tampa. It was $25, and if you bought cigars, you got $25 back off what you were buying. And I think that included an ashtray even with that. Matter of fact, I know it did. The ashtray sitting right here. It's the small little Ashton ashtray. And what they do, they give you 3 cigars. You pick mild, medium, or full bodied, and they pull a representative cigar from what is it? Uh, La Aroma de Cuba San Cristobal. Is that theirs too?
Yep.
And the traditional Ashton line. And you light one, you smoke it for 5 minutes, put it down, light the other one for 5 minutes, and in between, eat some almonds, drink a little water, whatnot, to kind of clean up in between. And then after you've done all 3, you come back to the original one and relight it and just tell them or make notes about how it's different. And they called it, assaulting your palate or testing your palate or something. They had some name for the event, but it was a really neat thing. And I was overwhelmed by how drastically those cigars tasted after going through 2 more in between. And I just can't explain how much of a difference it was, and it was a neat experiment. And I've said I was going to do the same thing for some of my local guys here, and I still think I need to do that. It was a cool event.
Well, I've been to 2 Ashton events, and unfortunately at both of them, um, I did not have a chance to do any of those Taste of Excellence tests. My I was very lucky to spend a number of days or evenings with Manny Ferrara. Um, he was a gentleman. I believe he was the co-owner, or at least vice president of Ashton for quite some time. And he tragically passed away about a year and a half ago.
It was actually a year and 2 days ago.
Oh, really? That recent? Or not that recent, but I mean that close to a year. Wow, I didn't realize that. Um, so I was at one Ashton dinner at IPCPR, and they pass out a ton of their cigars and talk about them a little bit, but it's not really a formal Taste of Excellence event at all. And then I was able to go to another Taste of Excellence event um, near my home. I just ended up talking with Manny the whole night long. So I didn't really go through the whole formal thing, but I am absolutely a believer and a proponent of the idea of raw almonds, having a half of a raw almond and creating an almond paste on your tongue, chewing it, and then using that almond paste almost as a palate cleanser, for lack of a better term, just rubbing it all across your tongue, your hard palate, your soft palate, however much you can, um, and then using that to just freshen yourself up and give you a new look on the cigar. Um, it's a really great test, and it's something that I've done time and time again. I really do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's the sorbet of cigar smoking.
Yes, let's say that. Now I have a number of friends of mine who are either in the industry or have been involved in it, whatever it may be, and they just think it's a whole bunch of malarkey. But I love it. It works well for me. I don't know if it's something that you need a certain type of palate for it to work with you on, but that's just one of the things at these Ashton events that they'll kind of push you through. Some others are, I think that they've got chocolate, and a few other things for you to give a try and then see how it changes the flavor of the cigar or perhaps enhances the flavor of the cigar. So they're great if you ever have an opportunity to get to them.
Yeah, and it's not that I wasn't a believer beforehand, but after going through that event, I was firmly ensconced in the belief that that's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Well, so that was my spectacular morning with a Mia Mora Reserva. Darn, it was good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just their regular Mia Mora line. I'm intrigued to try out the Reserva.
Well, the Reserva definitely had the same core of flavors. It was just, like I said, it was pumped to 11. That was terrible. That sounded like an Arnold Schwarzenegger "This is Spinal Tap" reference. That's horrible.
Wasn't that somebody else's marketing thing for their cigars? This one goes to 11. I mean, I know the origin of the quote, but
yeah.
Somebody used that in magazine ads.
Really, I didn't know that. I wouldn't doubt it, but I didn't know that.
I think it may have been one of the Tatuaje cigars.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. Pete would have fun with that, I bet. Well, the other cigar that I want to talk a little bit about this week was actually a gift from a listener, a gentleman named Michael, who sent both you and I some cigars, and they've got a little bit of an interesting history or origin story to them. And I had a Connecticut Robusto that I'd like to talk about, and it was a good cigar. It had a very nice, typical Nicaraguan sweetness to it, and then it also kind of rounded out, or I shouldn't say rounded out, because the citrusy sweetness didn't go away, but it was joined by kind of a caramely flavor, just kind of a deep, rich, stewed, cooked sugar. And it was a pretty darn good cigar. I really enjoyed what I got out of that, no doubt.
And you want to talk a little bit about the background or the backstory on that?
Well, yeah, we can get into that briefly, but I think that we'll probably cover it in a little bit more detail on another show. But so this listener, Michael, he has a really, really unique take on cigars. He has bought his own loose leaf tobacco, brought that into the country, and he rolls his own cigars and blends his own cigars with that loose leaf tobacco. So I'm incredibly intrigued by that. I didn't even know that such a thing was possible unless you had a relationship with a manufacturer who would, or a grower who would ship that to you. And I will absolutely be looking more into this. It's kind of a fun little thing. So, and Michael has certainly proven that you can yield good results when doing this. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool. I received some cigars from him as well, and I haven't lit one up yet, but I'm kind of anxious to do.
Well, I think you should. I've burned two, and the one that I'm talking about, this Connecticut Robusto, was banded with that name on it. The cigars are called Trumpetto, and I believe that Michael is a jazz musician, so it kind of has some tie-in for him there. But like I said, we're I think gonna hope to have Michael on the show in a couple weeks. We'll get into that a bit more later on in tonight's show, but it'll be nice to kind of dig deeper into it and share a little bit of that with the listeners. I think it'll be pretty fun for a lot of us.
Yeah, I am intrigued as well. I think it's a neat thing. I knew there were a couple of companies that sell whole leaf tobacco online. You don't have to buy it directly from a grower or anything, but I think it's kind of cool actually to roll your own cigar.
Oh yeah, totally cool.
I've done that kind of thing with pipe tobaccos where I bought, blend components and to be honest, have not really made much that was smokable. But it would be neat to try it, assuming I could learn to roll a cigar to start with.
Well, yeah, I guess you probably need to to make a pretty good investment in just practice tobacco. But either way, it would be fun. I mean, I'm such a geek. I love rolling and playing and taking a leaf and bunching it up and seeing what that individual leaf has, and so to do it kind of throughout the whole process would be a blast.
Yeah, and we talked briefly off air about some cigars I dug up this week after the thought occurred to me that General Cigar had taken an entire tour of events, and this has been 5-7 years ago maybe, and they and I dug up the samples here, some that I had left because I actually made it to a few of those events on that tour. In my travels around the state, I somehow managed to end up in stores that were having the events at the same time.
Lucky you.
And what they did was bring in these little, kind of like cigarillos you can maybe see on the screen here, just small little samples, and they have simple little bands on them that had a V, an L, or an S. That's Seco, Viso, and Ligero. Each one of them is composed entirely of that priming or that leaf, and just to get the folks that were at the event to smoke them and see what each of those, what each of the three had to offer, what they brought to a blend, so you could kind of pick out, well, this is what I'm really enjoying in that cigar, and from that point you can go on and look for different concentrations or availability of Ligero or whatever it is you enjoy in other cigars, and just to get a little bit of a head start on picking out something new to try. And it was a neat event.
Well, yeah, it most certainly would be. Um, I haven't had the opportunity to. I hadn't had the opportunity to go to one of those myself, but it would certainly have been a blast, and I've been able to participate in other things, other events similar to that when we've been at or when I've been at different factories in Nicaragua and Dominican and such. But I think it would be a really useful thing for a lot of people to be able to do at their own local shop. It would be fun to learn and play and kind of dig a little bit deeper into this hobby and lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So,
you got a heck of a list here too.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit of a short list this week. I did stick a couple of things up there. The first one was the Herrera Esteli, and I made a note not to be confused with Frank Herrera's biography. This is from Willie Herrera through Drew Estate. Willie, I believe, used to work for El Titan de Bronze down in Miami, which is a small factory. They make cigars for themselves under their own names, but I believe they also make some of El Primer Mundo cigars. But these are, like I said, are being made by Drew Estate. Have Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Honduran binder, and Nicaraguan filler. Picked them up at Corona when I was over there, like I mentioned this past week, waiting to go to the airport. The thing that, it's a good cigar all around, but the construction on this thing was, these things, there were two of them, was just flawless. Just as perfect an example of a good cigar roller as I've ever come across. And it was a very traditional kind of Nicaraguan flavor. I don't know that I would have lined it up with most of the other typical taste profiles I find at Drew Estates. But man, they were great cigars. Once again, like I've said before, most of the things that make this list for me each week are things that jump out as being good cigars, and this one definitely hit the spot. In both cases, I had the Robusto. Now, I had tried that once before, back last year at an event Willie was at. He wanted to try. I don't know why I waited this long to get some more of it. Well, except that they just recently launched, but they've been out for a little while, and I haven't gotten to them yet. But I'll definitely pick up a few of those along the way for sure. What else have I got on here? I did. I'm not going to talk much about this. If you want to get the full details, you can head over to the website there at thecigarme.com. I did Eddie Tarazona sent me a few cigars to try. Man, they without fail they were good cigars. I had a couple of favorites in there you can read about, but I do a series of articles called Cigar Spotlights, where I take a certain manufacturer and go through their full range and at least one size from each of those. Eddie's got 5 different lines right now. And I went through all 5 and did a short little review of each one and what I liked about them and all. So you can check that out over there. The Lat 52, which is what I just relit a few minutes ago. I've had several of those this week. Let's see, looking Ecuadorian wrapper again, Nicaraguan filler and binder. One of the most unique and interestingly sweet cold draws on a cigar that I've come across lately. In the smoking itself, got a lot of leather, some nuttiness, a little bit of sweet cedar would pop up every once in a while. Love them. Definitely see putting away a box or 2 of those in the future, in the very near future. I think they full retail on those is about $7 or $8 a piece. Before I pick up too many boxes, I'm going to wait on that 44, give it a try. It'll be a little bit different, being a Maduro, but I'm interested. I like what they're doing so far. Again, Pete Johnson's hands are on it, and I'm a big fan of his blending style for sure. What else have I got on here? Last one, T.L. Johnson, and that's Terry Johnson. Some of you are fly fishermen, you may know his name. He's been in the fly rod business for dang near 30 years, I guess. He makes some fantastic fly rods. But within the past couple of years, he's gotten into cigars. He has Luis Sanchez and at La Tradición Cubana making cigars for him. These are very unlike anything Luis does under his own name, in that they have a Pennsylvanian wrapper, which is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into that, that gives it a really nice, toasty, the dark kind of flavors. That sweet charred oak is what I call it. And I did a review for these a few months ago, and I said you could almost imagine sticking your head into a used whiskey barrel, for those of you that may live near distilleries. And that's very much what it's like to me. That charred oak just really jumps out. I have several of those put away, and I traded some messages with Terry this week, and that made me realize I haven't had one of his cigars in a while, so I went and dug one out. It's just as good as I remember. I don't remember what they initially debuted at for pricing. I think it was a little higher, but right now they're about $8 a piece for the Robusto. Great cigar. Not widely available. They're a little hard to find. I don't think his distribution's fully up and going yet. I don't think he's nationwide. He does have quite a few retailers. I don't know if it's by design. Doesn't seem to be readily available online. Might have to do some searching and find a retailer you can call up and order. I don't know how that's working, but I don't see a lot of presence online.
Let me ask you a question. I know that you kind of had the recollection of the used whiskey barrel based on kind of the flavors you were getting or the sensations you're talking about here. But for those of us who don't live by a distillery, enlighten me a little bit. So if I stick my head into a barrel, it's not going to smell like whiskey. It's not going to have an overwhelmingly whiskey aroma. When you breathe in that aroma in there, it's going to smell like a sweet charred wood aroma.
A little bit of both.
Wow.
Many distilleries take a barrel and they char the inside of it before it's ever used for whiskey.
Yeah, I'm certainly aware of that.
And so after it's been through the process of maturation and whatnot, and in Kentucky, bourbons must be in a new barrel. They cannot reuse barrels. We learned this in Scotland. Most of those barrels that are used in America for bourbons are disassembled and shipped to Scotland, and they reuse them for storing their single malts for all those years. But no, it's not just going to smell like the spirit. It's going to have, of course, it's going to be there. Where I'm from in East Tennessee, there's a Jack Daniel's barrel cut in half on every person's front porch for miles, using it for a flower pot.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess that's kind of a specific thing. I don't know how to describe it. It does have that whiskey kind of smell to it, but it's a little more subdued. The charred oak really stands up, and it's just bright to me. I call it a dark flavor, but it's bright. I guess bold would be a better descriptor.
Well, you learn something every day. I like that. I told you I loved your reviews.
Yeah, and if I don't know something, I just make it up. So.
Once again, thecigarme.com. Head up there for reviews without integrity, apparently.
Yeah, I figure people got Google. They can figure this stuff out.
No, that's awesome. I really appreciate that that whole analogy and the idea here. I mean, you and I had kind of spoken earlier in the week about the T.L. Johnson stuff, and I'm certainly familiar with that from my fly fishing background. My old man and I, we kind of have this ritual of going to different rivers around the American West and doing trout fishing, and there's obviously not too much trout fishing in the area where I'm at in the Midwest, but when I head out west, it seems like that's what everybody's going after. And so the idea of fly fishing is something that's always been positive. I mean, even if I go out and get skunked on a river, it's just never a bad experience. I'm standing in the middle of some sort of gorgeous bit of God's country, and I've got a fly rod, a cigar, a flask. My old man is somewhere just out of reach of whatever caddis I'm using, because the good Lord knows I'm going to go after my dad and try to make him laugh and hook him and have a good time. Just do stupid things. And, so to be kind of reintroduced to the T.L. Johnson stuff from Kip, from you this week has been nice. I'm going to have to seek some of that out. I don't think I've had it in years, maybe 2 years. I mean, maybe even more than that. How long has a lot of this stuff been out? 4 or 5 years, right?
Not cigars?
Yeah, cigars.
Cigars? Yeah, just a couple of years. I don't think it's been that long.
Maybe I had just had it when they were originally released, because I know it's been a while for me, and I certainly have no recall on flavors.
I didn't mention which it is. He has a couple different lines. This specific cigar is the Tempio, Tempio. That's the one I'm talking about.
Well, I don't. I'm not necessarily a multilingual person, but I would imagine that Tempio is probably a play on tempo.
I think it's actually Italian rather than Spanish, and I believe he said it was temple.
Oh, well, never mind. See, when I don't know things, I just make them up. So Tempio, in my mind, is having something to do with tempo, which both the cigar and fly fishing have. So yeah, I've just created a response and a reasoning all in my own head.
Well, I am speaking entirely in hearsay. I have never verified that. That's just what I was told.
Well, you're making my story not so funny anymore.
Okay, well, I'll take it all back.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm going to seek them out. I really like the idea of a really toasty cigar. There's something about that that's just intriguing to me. I don't know, if done well and if it comes across well, I think it's such an enjoyable flavor. Toasty to me can at times be reminiscent of dry. I get a lot of toasty flavors, or flavors can come across toasty to me in a cigar that hasn't been properly cared for. So to have a proper example of that flavor is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, and that's not the case here at all. These are very nicely cigars. And when I say toasty, I don't mean toasty in the sense of toast breakfast toast with your bread. I mean that toasty oak, charred oak kind of flavor.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That kind of charry sense, and yeah, I guess that's why to me when I have a cigar that's dried and poor, there's so much more combustion to, or poorly kept. There just seems to be so much more unintended combustion to it. It kind of likened to that kind of toasty, charred flavor that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you moving on a bit here. You've got some bad news to share about a fantastic cutter of yours, don't you?
Yeah, my paleo died this week. Don't exactly know for sure what happened. I got a guess after going through the autopsy of the thing. And I probably use this cutter much more than most people do. But I think the plastic just kind of wore enough that it overextends when it opens, and one of the blades fell out of it. And, it's not it seemed catastrophic at the time. I can actually put the thing back together, and I know they offer a warranty, so it's not a concern, and it's not a dig on Paleo. I love this cutter. In fact, now I can show you a good view of what I love about it. You see this blade, for those of you watching the video, goes maybe 30 more degrees worth around a cigar than typical, and it really cradles the thing and encircles it completely with the blades rather than entering it at a lesser angle and pinching the cigar before it starts to cut. And these just really get a good firm hold on there and make a good cut. So I don't know if I'm going to contact them and ask about the warranty, or just take these blades and try to finagle my own cutter out of them. And I just dropped one somewhere down into my lap. I would hate to castrate myself with a cutter here. Anyway, now that distraction aside, yeah, I stuck that in the notes, and it's not even something we got to really talk about. It's certainly not an indictment on the cutter. I have gotten a lot of use out of it, and I love it, and we'll buy another one, although I may wait until I can get my hands on one of those stainless ones, because I got to hold that thing at the IPCPR, and man, it's like 4 ounces. It's the heaviest cutter you'll ever put in your hand, and I don't think I'm kidding about it. I believe he said it was 4 ounces. You will not forget that's in your pocket. It was just a really cool thing, but I haven't seen them on the shelf yet. Anyway, minor setback.
Well, yin to the yang there. You shared a poor story. I'll share a really great story to me that, completely different tone than that. But hey, I'm a co-host of this show too, so I can talk about what I want. And today I had one hell of a pleasure of meeting a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. My wife's family for years now has hosted and staffed a charitable hockey game, a Guns and Hoses, cops versus police, cops versus firemen, charitable hockey game that I've worked a few times, and so this year someone had located this gentleman. His name was Alan Lynch, and he was kind of the honorary. He would come out and do the honorary puck drop before all the games, and was there because our charity that we had selected this time was Wounded Warrior Project. So there's a bit of a tie-in there as well. And so I shook the gentleman's hand, spoke with him a bit, and just stood in absolute awe of something that our nation awards upon only the most worthy people. It's truly, I don't know, I don't want to say life-changing. I mean, that just gets thrown around and sounds so over-dramatic, but it impacted my life, to know that I shook someone's hands that have taken a life, and that I shook someone's hands who have obviously saved lives. That was kind of standing in the middle of an ice arena with my hands full of crappy $5 fundraiser bags of tchotchkes. It just was kind of a pretty awe-inspiring moment for me to think about the lives that certain people have and that they've devoted to saving other people's lives and making it so we can do things as mundane as a cigar podcast, or uh, not all be not all be speaking North Korean or something. I said speaking North Korean. Wow, I can't believe I just said that. Y'all know what I mean, at least. And it's a pretty darn good day, and it's something that makes the opportunity for me to come home and have a good cigar and a good conversation all the sweeter. I probably won't ever forget that, and won't ever forget our conversation, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I don't really know the exact tie-in to cigars, but I wanted to share that. And Dale from Dogwatch always used to say, if you see a vet, go out, shake his hand. He deserves it, and I'm sure that he'll be very appreciative. And today was definitely no different. He was a vet, just like so many others that have come before him and after. But it was pretty awe-inspiring to know that medal around his neck was put there by a president, that he had saved numerous people's lives, and I've never even been in a situation when someone's life was threatened. So it just puts things into perspective. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and there doesn't have to be a tie to cigars for some things.
Yeah, I happen to agree, and I'm glad you do too. It was a pretty special event, something I've never been able to experience before, and just thought I'd share with everybody.
Well, cool. I'm going to let you roll on to the next item there. I'm going to mute myself for half a second because I got to fish out a cigar from a bag.
Oh, no problem at all. Well, I think we're going to be moving on just a touch here to listener emails. We got another one from a gentleman who I believe has emailed us in the past, Steve Doral. He writes, have you guys ever noticed that there's a difference between cigars purchased on the internet as compared to cigars you've bought at a brick and mortar? Same cigars, just bought at different locations. He seems to have noticed that some internet-sourced cigars tend to be underfilled, and he's wondered if the reason was that internet cigars can offer such great deals that manufacturers are making almost a lower-class cigar for them. And he wants to know if either of us has had any similar experiences, or perhaps converse experiences. You only are getting spectacular cigars from a brick and mortar. And I really haven't noticed this. I don't do a lot of my sourcing online. I don't know how you are, Kip, but
well, you could probably count the number of times I've ordered cigars online on one. And
wow.
The few times I have, mostly it's because I'm ordering from a place that I frequent in person. I just can't get there at the moment. But I don't know if you're talking about the same line of cigars. Walk into a store versus buying that same cigar online. I can't imagine it's a different cigar. But I don't know. I don't know how things work like that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I can't imagine that it's a different cigar. I don't know. There's been, for years, people have talked about that in the Cuban cigar industry, that different countries would get different quality of cigars. And I just think that that's kind of hullabaloo, because I don't think Cuba has the the ability, the business sense to be able to pull something off like that. But speaking with cigars from other areas that are available in the States, I've been to a lot of factories. I've had a lot of conversations with manufacturers that I know sell both on the internet and at brick and mortars, and never once has this come up, and I don't see the reason for it. I don't see how it could ever positively benefit someone to do that.
It seems detrimental. a couple of things. One, yeah, you're right about Cuba. They didn't even realize one of their managers was stealing millions of cigars for years, apparently. um, but just sitting here thinking about it, it occurs to me that there's a possibility that the care and handling of the cigars you buy online may not have been optimal the whole time, and they spent a week in shipping out in who knows what kind of weather and condition. And I don't know, maybe that could impact how they smoke.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
But I don't know, I think the great deals that you come across online with strictly online retailers or e-tailers, a large part of that is because they don't have the overhead of a store. And, some of them do maintain stores, and so there is overhead, but that is going to be supported by the store. And there is much more overhead in a website than you think. You have a big one that you really want to show up in search engine results because they've regulated tobacco advertising almost out of existence online these days. So, I know a local shop in Tampa that has a successful website, and the owner is telling me he pays $30,000 to $40,000 a year just to keep that site showing up in search engine results.
Unbelievable. That is crazy. Wow.
But I think, at least part of the deals you find online is that they can, cut those prices down to the marrow just because they don't have the same amount of overhead to support from them. So I don't know this different cigars. I guess I don't know that industry very well at all and shouldn't be talking about it.
Well, I mean, you certainly bring up some points that we can hypothesize about, I mean, the idea that some of those internet cigars are only on the internet because someone has bought mass quantities at an extremely low price and are taking the chance to put them out there at a deep discount because they think they'll be able to generate a buck based on it. And in those cases, I've had conversations with people who feel that it's silly and that it hurts your brand a ton because you're putting it out there to someone who's devaluing it and essentially underselling all of your brick and mortars, which is silly. But,
we just witnessed that with one certain maker that relaunched their entire company, but, largely because some of the bigger internet warehouses had tarnished their name by blowing their cigars out at $2 or $3 a stick when they're supposed to retail at $8.
Yeah. I mean, and there's more than one or two stories about things like that, and it's a shame. It sounds like a great idea. Oh my gosh, this guy's going to take 50,000 cigars right away, or 250,000 cigars. That's amazing. That totally helps us out. But then all of a sudden, nobody else is ordering your cigars because they can't sell them off the shelves. So.
Yeah, well, why? And you're really going to hack off your bread and butter retailers when, I'm going to sell 100,000 cigars to these online guys, and they're going to sell them for half the price a retailer, a brick and mortar can sell them. So what's the point in them ordering any more from me because they're being outcompeted by the internet guys?
Well, I've got, a story similar to that. I know a gentleman who is an importer, and he'll bring cigars in, and he actually could not bring the cigars into the country for a better price than what he could buy them on one of these big box internet stores for. So he just stopped buying them from his manufacturer that he was importing them from. He would buy them from that big box and sell those. I mean, it's just it's kind of shocking, but I mean, it's a total cluster when you think about what that really does. And I know that this is a little bit off tangent from where we had started, but or a little bit of a tangent from where we had started, but I think it comes down to the same thing. You're maybe seeing those ideas of poor product in the way that Steve is talking about them, but it's pardon me, it's more from the fact that those cigars just aren't even being cared for, and so it's not that they're a lower class of cigar. It's just when you do that, when you kind of sell your soul that way, you're taking out every single bit of integrity that those cigars have. And so why should that retailer even, that online retailer even care about them? You don't. So why should he?
Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're talking about is a lot of what's behind a couple of other things we're seeing in the industry. One with especially the boutique makers, the smaller guys, disallowing or putting strict controls on how their cigars are sold online. They don't want them blown out for pennies on the dollar because they don't want to take the risk of tarnishing their name,
Yeah.
so to speak. And
Yeah.
it's also probably part of what's behind why we see so many new lines that are e-tailer specific. They are made or banded and packaged very specifically for that retailer. So even if it's the same cigar with a different band on it, it's not going to be, well, I can buy XYZ cigar online dirt cheap when it's $12 a stick in my store. I now can buy STP instead of XYZ, even though it very well may be the same cigar. You just can't tell.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
see that I used to work in television industry, and a couple of things. One company I worked for would make probably 15 to 20 different, not models, different company lines of televisions. And they would have a model in each one of those lines. That's the exact same television. When it gets to the end of the line, the placard that gets stuck on the front is what determines where that television's going and what it's going to retail for. It may have a $150 difference at retail, but it's the same television minus the little plastic tag on the front of it.
Wow.
And this is all occurring to me at the moment, so I may sound fuddled here, but
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I was shopping for a television a few years ago, and I noticed the specs on a certain model would be identical at several different stores, but they would have different model numbers. And what was going on is the manufacturer would not sell this Model X to his little guys, his smaller retailers at one price, and he's going to sell to Sam's Club at a much lower price because Sam's Club's going to buy 50,000 of them. So what they would do is the same thing. They would change the model number. You could buy the exact same television with a different model number at a different price, and that satisfied the smaller guys that they weren't being knocked out of the market just because they can't buy so many.
It's fun to me to watch how this whole industry of I don't want to say big box stores is another industry, but it's kind of that idea of getting away from your corner store. Everybody buying what they need at their local retailer, and that's how they get whatever it is. They're not, using this thing called the World Wide Web to source products, but it's just so interesting to me to see how the electronics industry is handling it, the cigar industry is handling it. It's just totally intriguing. I just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, and it's odd in the cigar industry for a couple of reasons. One, it's a very old world kind of product, or old school kind of product. It's not known for being cutting edge in most respects. And at the same time, cigar stores, to me, bring something more to the table than some other industries in that they provide, that overhead is not just simply so they have a place to sell cigars in comparison to an internet retailer, but a good one provides seating, televisions, drinks, and any number of other things that I happen to appreciate because I travel a lot. It's nice to have a place to sit down and smoke a cigar.
Yeah. Well, I'm having just a touch of a problem with my my screen here. If I could kind of ask you to head on out to, I think the next thing we were going to talk about was kind of a wrap on this Unbanded. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. We are at the end of the notes here, ready to talk about the Unbanded.
Perfect. And it's properly timed. I just got my screen back. Well, yeah, we've got this lovely Unbanded we kind of need to wrap. I know that you're finished. I'm definitely on to my second cigar. So let's kind of wrap this up one more time. What are your kind of closing thoughts on this? Anything different from before?
Not really. I mean, that overarching or backdrop of sweetness stayed there the whole time for me, down to the very end. And I can't say bitter end again because it never got any of that. It stayed true all the way to the nub for me. Just that classic kind of can't even say classic. I don't know. I guess I don't even want to call it. Good Lord, I don't know what I'm saying. Didn't want to assign a country. I made a wild guess. If I had to, if I was pressed to, I would have said Nicaraguan, but for no big reason other than, yeah, it doesn't seem like something else in my mind. Had that backdrop of sweetness, a little bit of woodsiness or some leathery flavors that poke their head out every once in a while. Not a lot of brighter flavors, not a lot of cedar or citrus to me. It was a very good cigar. I have no complaint whatsoever. I'm grateful for the suggestion, Jeff. Yeah, that's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by a couple things with this cigar, and we've talked about all of them. It burned incredibly fast. The wrapper was pretty unique. It was totally matte in sheen, but it had these little crystals of oil that were starting to perk up and give the cigar just kind of a really beautiful shimmer to it. And I can't pinpoint what that wrapper was. I didn't get any incredibly specific flavors that pointed to anything or another. I did get some specific flavors that are unique, but not anything that was reminiscent of another cigar. It was a good smoke. I think that I'm going to be quite humbled when we hear what this was. One way or another, even if we find out that it's something we're both familiar with, I'm just going to be shocked. So,
are you ready for the grand unveiling?
Yes, sir. I most certainly am.
Christy packaged this up, so I don't know what else she's got in. Oh, you want one final guess? Because I believe you're pretty familiar with the cigar.
No.
It is the Cabaguan Guapos 46 Maduro.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh, golly. Jeff totally played a trick on me. He knows I love that cigar. Oh.
Didn't we just talk about this like an hour ago? That's going to be a featured cigar later this year. That's pretty funny.
Ay.
Ecuadorian sun-grown wrapper, or no, broadleaf Maduro wrapper, with the same Cabaguan blend as the normal.
Well, you were good there with the reminiscent pepin flavors, no doubt.
I'm reading that she printed out a whole little story here about it. I don't know where she got that from.
Wow.
Cool.
How doggone it.
I think that's hilarious that we just talked about this cigar and we're both sitting there smoking the thing.
You know, that is pretty cool. Ay. Well, I'm glad I said that I liked the cigar. Jeez, that would have been embarrassing.
That would have been liquid awesome right there.
This is a little bit different size than the one that I'm pretty familiar with. I have a lot of experience with the it's roughly a Sublime or a Toro, maybe a 52 or a 54 by 6 is the one that I have had a bit more experience with. So I won't use that as a crutch or anything. I should have known better, but either way, good cigar. I liked it. Ay.
I'm a little dumbfounded there. I'm a big fan of all things Tatuaje. I've had plenty of those myself. Just didn't pick up on it. Goes to show you we're even dumber than we think.
Well, next week's cigar of the week, if I can quickly change the subject to avoid the egg being visible on my face, is the El Rey del Mundo Tainos. It's from 2002. This is one of my favorite cigars. It's a Churchill, so it's a Julieta 2 Vitola. I really dig this cigar. I'm hoping I haven't had many of these from this box recently because it's been sitting down for the long haul, aging. But I am really hoping that this cigar is going to be truly unique in that, um, Kip, when you smoke it, I'm pretty sure that you're going to have this sense of, man, there's a lot of flavor here, but there is just so much that's brimming. Like I can just sense that it's on the cusp of being released, but it's just not there yet. This is a cigar to me that, I mean, I've had, brand new versions. I've had 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 25-year-old versions, and it's like the cigar just stays the same, but it just evolves, and every day there's more flavor that's going to come out of it, and just one additional layer that's revealed. So at about 10, 11 years where these things are, there'll be a good bit of flavor to it, but I also think that there's going to be a ton that you're just left there going, oh, man, what a cliffhanger. I wish I could get the rest of it.
Cool.
So,
That sounds interesting. And I don't believe I've ever had an El Rey del Mundo, well, at least not the non-domestic.
well, I hope I'm not talking it up too much, and I hope that kind of what I'm used to and what I expect out of this cigar is what we can both experience. It'll be a nice topic for the show. So
Yeah, I'm excited now. Man, I'm hyped up about this cigar.
good.
Go smoke one right away. I'm just kidding. Oh,
Well, we always want to tell everybody to feel free and be sure to send in any unbanded submissions, suggestions. Send an email to info@thecigarme.com. Kip's lovely wife, Christy, gets that email, so you don't need to worry about either of us being nefarious and cheating. As you can tell by tonight, we certainly aren't peeking ahead of time.
yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of funny, actually.
that's painfully obvious. Oh, what else we got coming up?
Well, it looks like next week, as we had said, we've got that Taínos. I'll be out of town, so I will be out of my normal smoking room for the recording. So that should be fun. I'll be out west visiting my folks, and not exactly sure when we're going to do the recording, but either way, it'll come to you guys all at the same time, normally when you expect it. So hopefully it won't be too terribly different for the average listener. But coming up after that, on the 12th, we have our live show. The second Friday of every month, we do our live show on the Cigar Federation. This is at 9 p.m. Eastern on the night of the 12th, and we're going to be joined by a gentleman by the name of Michael Stewart. We mentioned him earlier with those cigars that one of the cigars that I had smoked that are domestically rolled and sourced from loose leaf tobacco. So Michael's going to have some great insight and really fun show. I hope that everybody's going to be interested in hearing about that and hearing what it is that Michael does, how it's different, and we're also having him on because he was the winner of our Tatuaje giveaway a few weeks back. So we're going to be smoking one of the cigars that he was given in that package, and should be a good one to kind of get a third person's perspective of how that cigar gets reviewed. So
Yeah, that actually is one of my very favorite tatuajes, and it is a just prime example of the goodness that can come from that San Andreas leaf, that wrapper leaf.
amen to that. Well, as I had just mentioned, 2 weeks we'll be on cigarfederation.com for that live show. Head up there ahead of time, guys. Check out that site. Great people, great site, great idea. A really unique forum or location for the cigar interested folks. So head up there, definitely.
Absolutely. And like always, you can find me at thecigarme.com and now cigarme.com. If you hit that, it will be forwarded on. I'm the proud owner of that domain now. Thankfully, other guy who I don't know, the squatter, he allowed his registration to lapse, and I was able to get that. So get there either which way now. And you can get me at Kip at thecigarme.com for an email, and Craig at thecigarme.com. Of course, you can always find us at Cigar Federation. You can yourself a profile there. Hang out, watch the show. The video is posted from the show every week. As Craig mentioned, it's live at 9 p.m. Eastern on the second Friday each month. And we're looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, be sure you can always find us on Facebook, Twitter, anywhere else you want to track us down and be a little bit of an internet stalker. We encourage it. Well, and as always, we want to say thank you, and we want to say good night, and absolutely make sure that everyone knows how much we appreciate you listening to us on a weekly basis, or if this is your first time listening, how much we appreciate that, too. Hopefully you'll want to tune in again. So tonight I just want to say thank you very much to my good buddy Scott and Chris for all that they've done for the betterment of the world. So I see it, I appreciate it, and just want to say thanks. So thanks to all the listeners, thanks to those two fine gentlemen I mentioned, and Kip, thanks to you. And we want to wish everybody a wonderful week and have a great night.